You know how in Proverbs it says that a person's heart plans his way, but the Lord will determine his steps? And in Isaiah, the people were in this space for a really long time of not hearing the voice of the Lord, of having no clear direction, and they were suffering really bad. And Isaiah, prophesied to them that your teacher will be silent no more. You will walk to the left or to the right, and he will say, "This is the way, walk in it." And I feel like that has been my life. When I don't know where I'm going, I don't know what I'm doing, but in the little things, in the smallest things, that if I was not really paying attention or if I had a different mindset, I maybe would miss. But it has really been grounding me in this space that I'm in. And honestly, I just want to talk about God's grace and his mercy, and just really the testimony that has come from receiving answers to prayers that I asked for years ago. Even though a lot of the big ones that I had may never come, they will never come because they were attached to a marriage that I no longer have. And I feel like all of us can relate to that in some way, in some area of our lives. I had woke up one morning. It was a really nice, quiet, sunny day. And I remember just like peeking through the window a little bit. I see the sunshine, I hear the birds chirping. And I had this realization that, man, this being my circumstance, being my positioning, really isn't all that bad. It's actually kind of nice. And I talked about in this video how, like, that is not something I would have thought would ever come out of my mouth, but it did. And I realized at that moment, it seemed like a series of small events that just kept adding up and adding up and adding up had accumulated to this big thing. And I just was grateful. I was grateful for God's faithfulness. I was grateful. And I think for the first time in my life, I had this inner knowing that, man, I'm never going to question God again when it comes to whether or not he answers prayers that come from me. I have always believed that God is good, just not to me. I believe that God answers prayers, just not mine. I believe that God keeps his promises. I just hadn't seen any of them fulfilled. And so I would struggle with that. And I think that that's not unique to me. Anyone who has dealt with a lot of suffering in their life, for whatever reason, you become jaded at some point. Like, it's just the nature of the game. And what breaks my heart, and the reason really why I'm making this, is because I don't want people to stay in that jaded place and then just be like, oh, whether either God isn't good, God isn't for me, and walk away from the faith. There are countless lives in the Bible where their stories are told where they did live lives of suffering. And that's not really what I'm going to go into today, but there are also so many people, the people who came before us, who've lived on earth before us. There are so many people who have gone through really intense things, and it begs the question, why do some stay? Why do some leave? What is the tension? What is the thing in the middle that makes or breaks their faith journey? And I feel like I at least got the answer for what had the potential to break mine, but instead it's gotten me to a place where I feel like I know and understand who God is more now than I ever have. And I've been walking with God for 10 years. I'm just now getting there this year, the 10th year, which is also which is also a blessing, because the number 10, what does it mean? The number 10, I'm looking at my computer, but the number 10 symbolizes divine order, completeness, perfection, and human responsibility. And I definitely have been experiencing things where it's like, oh, babe, at this point, God has given me so many things in his word. He's given me so much through his people. He has done so much for me in my life, and it's actually up to me now to decide whether or not I believe in what is in fact like in what is inherently true. Anyways, back to the story. That was a really big tangent, but I am a planning type of lady. Okay. I love a plan. I've done a video on my channel about planning for the new year. I am kind of crazy. I have systems for my systems, and my friends and my family, they look at me sometimes and they're like, girl, that's a lot. But you know what's crazy? I didn't come into this year with a plan. I literally couldn't. I was so stuck in this I don't even want to say survival mode, but all I could focus on day to day was what is happening today? What do I need to focus on today? And I had different iterations after going through, well, after being separated and going through the divorce and everything, that obviously looked different depending on how far removed I was from that. But I remember when everything first started, I genuinely just had to make sure that I was getting out of bed, that I was putting on deodorant, and that I would force myself to eat something. I didn't do this purposely, but the amount of stress that I was under when everything happened made me lose weight. It felt like uncontrollably. I think that might have been more in my head than in real life, but yeah, I was losing weight, a ton of weight. Like I would buy clothes, couldn't fit them in 2 months, that kind of thing. And then I started having heart palpitations. And so I'm on top of the health issues that I already have. I was dealing with the impact of going through a divorce, plus the impact of my health symptoms really not being controlled at that point. And then just this crippling fear and anxiety surrounding just this unknown. It wasn't even the fact that my relationship ended. It wasn't the fact that I was still dealing with health issues. I mean, I've been dealing with health issues since I was 9. It was the fact that I was entering this place where the plans that I had, where the dreams that I had, where the prayers I prayed attached to the plans, those weren't going to happen anymore. And it left me wondering, what the heck have I spent my time doing? What the heck is supposed to come out of this now? Where is this actually supposed to lead me? I don't know. And I don't like that I don't know, because I like to be in control. And the reason why I like to be in control is because in my life, I have felt so out of control with the things that happen inside of my body, where plans for me, still love a good plan. I'm still a planner. But plans for me had become really like a crutch. It had become this thing that I used where people, and none of this was conscious, but if you are a planner type of person, people don't necessarily look at you and be like, something's off about this picture. But I think I hid behind the plan, even especially when things would be going haywire in my life. When I felt like a few years ago, there was another time where the inverse of the weight thing was happening. I kept gaining weight and nothing that I did would stop it. I got to this place of being like, okay, well, if I plan the meals, if I control everything, if I only eat from scratch, if I never have a seed oil, if I do this and I do that and I do this and I do that, it will not only help the weight gain, but it will also help the symptoms, and it'll heal me. That will heal me. But the promise that I've been waiting on is for God to heal me. There was no space for him because my mind could never really get still. And that was, honestly, looking back, a common thread throughout many areas. Health was one of them. Um, Something else that I had really struggled with for some time. Not thank God for therapists, because that helped me quite a lot. And honestly, I could say that despite the fact that I walked through a divorce, The fears that I had when I entered into the marriage were not fears that I had once it ended, which is crazy because those fears came true. The main fear for me, there were two. One fear was that a spouse would leave me once there is no more masking that I could do, really. We all mask, but it's like when someone is that up close and that personal to you, there is the possibility that they look up one day and they're tired of it. They look up one day and they're like, I'd rather be somewhere else. That was a huge fear for me, especially with how intense and quote unquote incurable the things that I deal with are. The second fear that I had was that I wouldn't be a good partner to have in a relationship. Why? Because there's just so much stuff that happens when you're dealing with especially an invisible health thing that it's hard to explain. It's not just physically, it's not just mentally. It is an all-encompassing battle. Genuinely, it is. And I clung to what I could control. I clung to what I could control. Uh, it felt safe. Things felt safe there. Things felt predictable there. Things felt measurable there. In a life filled with uncertainty and a life filled with a lot of tears and a lot of heartbreak, I could rely on my hopes and my dreams for the future. But I started reading this book after the relationship ended, and there's a sentence at toward the end where the author just says how, you may never forget what's happened to you, the things that have been done to you. You may never forget it. You may never dissolve the emotions really attached to it. You're better at handling it. Grief isn't something that really goes away. It's something that you learn to live with, and it shows up in different ways. So even if I am healed by and large from the fact that I'm separated from a person, the impact of actions done to you or what you've done, even the impact of those things are still very real. They're still very present. And that's something that does have the potential to come back up in different stages of your life. But reading that did something in me. It made me it made me feel okay with the fact that, again, I can't control everything. I generally am someone who really like tackles head first emotional and mental and spiritual things. I'm not someone that struggles with holding on to things. I am the kind that's really like, no, let's work through it. That has a lot to do with my background in psychology and stuff. But also, I think that's just kind of, no, I wasn't always that way. I used to hold and ruminate and just curl into myself. But there's so much freedom, by the way, in feeling what you need to feel so that you can get to a place of surrender, so that you can get to a place of releasing whatever it is to the Lord. And the release is not equivalent to that thing never coming back. The release is in humbling yourself before your comforter and allowing him to comfort you and give you what you need to get through the day or the month or the years that it's heavily impacting you. And the beauty of that is that no matter how far removed you get, no matter how healed you become, he's still there to do that thing, to comfort you, even if the reaction to something goes from super explosive or causing you to become super depressed to just being really irritated. God is so good. God is so good in that space. I want to briefly go back to the whole answering prayers bit that I talked about earlier, because one big thing that it took me a while to say was that, you know, it's okay that the things I had been begging the Lord for when I was married are never going to happen. And I can say that they're never going to happen because they were attached to a life with a person that is no longer in my life. And in that, it makes him answering things that I believe he promised me and things that I prayed for on a smaller scale that much sweeter. And if you're kind of like, girl, I don't know what you're talking about, I did briefly mention it in this video too, but I I prayed to become a mother in that marriage. Never going to happen with that person. I'm not saying it's never going to happen, but it did not happen. And that's okay. That is okay. But what did? I asked the Lord to help me find a treatment that actually works. For example, with some of the health things that I have going on, I asked for healing with certain things, health related in my body. This year, I can honestly say that even without my body just being like perfect, there is so much that the Lord has done. There's so much that He's done. There is so much. And it reminds me of this song that I have been listening to on repeat. Like, I cannot get rid of it. It is because I feel like it explains so much, it touches on so much that I have been through, but it is also such a reminder that the time you wait for something is not a waste of time. The time that you pray for something, the time that you spend hoping and dreaming for a thing is never wasted in the sight of God. And even if you don't get answers to your like that one thing that you just really want more than anything else, he answers with what you really want more than anything else, which is himself, which is more a better knowing of his character. And yeah, like I've received answers to prayers in my body. I have received answers to really small things, even when it comes to wisdom and direction. I was I felt like the Israelites. I didn't get to a place of suffering because of sin the way that they did. However, suffering is suffering. It sucks no matter how you got there. And there was this time too where I was just like, man, God, like I don't know what I'm doing. I just feel like I'm kind of floating in the air right now. Like, please help me some way, somehow. Tell me what to do. And I have been experiencing those small daily, this is what you should be doing right now, do that. Mm, that actually won't be beneficial right now. Don't do that. And every time I can honestly say, I would just do the thing or don't do the thing. And I'm like, oh, I see now why you said to do or to withhold from doing something. And honestly, it makes me look back and say, how kind is the Lord? How kind is the Lord? If you're in that space of like you are in the trenches, really my advice to you is to allow yourself to feel it, but don't shut God out in the process. Even when you can't hear him, even when you don't want to go to him, even when all you can do is cry, when you can't focus on the words in the Bible, when you can't remember what you did in your quiet time, when you feel too exhausted, just give him what you can. I mean, he knows you better than anything than anything and anyone in this world. He also hears you better than anything and anyone in this world. So as long as you keep your heart open to him, he'll fill it.